Well, Supporters Club had been there for 66 years.
My name is Juliet Binitie, Reverend Juliet, as based on my ordination into ministry. I'm actually Ni Ogbu. I grew up in a very unique polygamous home. My father was a diplomat, but he chose polygamy. And sometimes I asked him why he chose polygamy. He said, oh, they needed a lot of children in my clan and all that. So I grew up with a fractured home in the sense of what polygamy is from the point of women, but my dad was a unifier. He believed that all of us were equal, male and female. So I think that was my beginning of my own freedom and liberty, that I had a dad who believed in me, believed in us as females. And I remember growing up when we were in school, my uncles would be telling my dad, why are you spending money on the girl child? After all, they're going to get married. And my father replied and said, let them be better wives. You know, in a very diplomatic matter, based on his training. And so I grew up with that level of understanding, yet I didn't really have confidence because my mom is a Benin princess from the royal house of the Benin kingdom. And she married my dad, not as the first wife, as one of the wives. I think I'm in the 11th child or something like that. We had more girls than boys and later a lot of boys. And so my mom stayed, but she couldn't cope. She had her own issues. And I grew up with my dad. So I was taken away and I grew up with my dad. So, and I didn't even see my mom till I was about 13 or so. I mean, anybody could have been my mom at that time. I didn't know who. But my dad loved me, though we had issues, rancors within the wives and within the children. And I grew up with a very low self-esteem, having my mom not being there, and I was told I was not beautiful. I was maligned, but I was intelligent. As a girl child, I was highly intelligent, an unusual intelligence at that time. I didn't see it as intelligence. I just thought it was normal. It's as I walked through life that I found out that I was actually quite intelligent, because I was always coming top three. And again, maybe because my mom wasn't around, I needed to prove my point or prove myself. I don't know. But I became a Christian early. I contacted Christianity as a born-again Christian as a teenager. I think for me that became the revolution. God became my revolution, because my dad was there and was not there. Being a diplomat and eventually being an executive in many organizations, chairman of John Holt, and doing a whole lot of things as a leader. Not just leader as a dad. He also had to also take responsibility for his community and his cousins, his relatives. In short, my father was playing God in the lives of many. So he wasn't really available as a dad, but he also did his duty of expressing how much he could express. But as a typical African, I don't think he could express as much as he should, and he should have taken some stance that he shouldn't have allowed the things that were happening within the home. And so I grew up on one side with a low self-esteem. I didn't really understand that it was a low self-esteem, but it was, because as I grew older, I could understand that even when people tell me that I'm beautiful, I am fine, I would look at them and say, this one wants to sleep with me. That's why he's expressing the fact. So, but I focused on my education. I focused on my Christianity. I made my silly mistakes as teenagers, but I was so focused. If there's anything that my life counts for, is that I was a focused child. I was not careless with my life. My siblings could not understand my seriousness. I was a very serious child. I did not, when I make mistakes, I chastise myself. I don't wait for people to chastise me. And I think I grew up with that. So I also had a philosophy of the fact that I didn't want to be dual. What you see is what you get. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite. If anything I hated as growing up as a child were backstabbers, backbiters, and hypocrites. And I had a lot of that within my family background. As a polygamous home, you expect that. Different wives, different camps, different children, and different ways, everybody trying to take side. But because I was the only child of my mom for my dad, I didn't take sides. So I also had that as a philosophy. I never take sides. I must hear from all parties. And people hate me for that because they expect me to lean towards them because they have told me something about someone. And I said, no, let's call the someone up. And let's settle the matter. We're supposed to be Christians, so let's settle the matter. So people didn't really like coming to me to talk because they know I won't gossip. I don't slander. I tell you, if I don't have the assurance to tell you upfront, I will not say it. If I say it, I will say very subtly, but I cannot boldly just bring someone down. And that's part of my philosophy. I never do it. I confront issues, even now boldly, more boldly, because over the years, as I grew up in Christianity, I started leadership early. By the time I was in secondary school, I was already a leader in fellowship, and also more so I was head girl. Because of that focused girl child and also my intelligence, I was head girl. And double back into university, I joined a fellowship. I was also a leader. So my position in leadership has always been glaring. During my youth service, that's the most funny one. My youth service was in Katsina. The camp was in Katsina, but I served in Jos. And I was the only female platoon leader. I had 33 people under me. So, and I became platoon leader, again, this focused and serious woman and intelligent. So I got to camp on time. I am adverse to lateness to a certain degree. If I'm late, I take responsibility for being late and not to make excuses, because people use traffic to make excuses. Traffic has always been in Lagos. My father taught me that. My father was never late. So I grew up with that, never late. So if I'm late, I take responsibility. And so that focused girl child gave me that position to be the only female platoon leader at that time in 1991. And so I've been comfortable. So you can see people have to take permission from me to go to town. I'm in charge and all that. So I've been thrown into leadership early. And I had a challenge because I grew up now in a polygamous home. And we were in the village often. And my father was so concerned to ensure the cultural context of the hometown. My father is Idoma. My mother is Bini. I'm married to an Ishekiri, whose mother is Isuko. So you can see that I'm a bona fide Nigerian. And also my father raised us up for citizenship. He believed that these were men in the 70s, 60s, and 70s who believed that the identification of a nation, your identity, was important. So nationalism was something that we're used to at home. As we were growing up, we had to read the newspaper every day. We had to listen to the 9 o'clock news. You know, those kind of strict ways of being conscious. Of course, some of my siblings didn't take it serious. But again, this serious girl child, everything her dad told her to do, she took it seriously. And so I grew up with that kind of mindset. But, you know, it was when I looked back, I knew how serious I was. But in the process, I thought it was normal. This is who I am. And so I grew up in that particular kind of background of not my father making us serious, though my father himself was serious. And I think somebody saw me and said, a female child that has her father's mannerism, not necessarily the integrity of the looks. I shared the looks between both of them, but mostly my mom. But in my character, I have a lot of my dad. So that helped me launch into leadership because I had a question about women leading because of what I saw around me. The docility of womanhood, the oppression of women, and even the woman permission to be docile and lack of productivity questioned my heart. So as I was growing up, that questioning became the answer to what I do today in women leadership. And I also train for national transformational principles and leadership. Understand that leadership is at the core of all issues of life. If we get the right leader, you get the right solutions. So that has been a summary of my story, that even in my getting married, I was conscious that I knew who I was at that time very clearly. So whoever was going to get married, I could not lose my identity. You know, my journey into ministry and being Reverend Juliet today is a big story. You know, I always tell people, the last place I wanted to do was to do ministry. Because as a young girl, I wanted to be a medical doctor to solve women diseases. That was my focus. And so I couldn't get medicine. There was a lot of distraction at the time I was doing JAM. But I did well. At that time, you know, the cutoff points were higher than what it is today. And I ended up with doing zoology. And so I graduated, but while I was in school, like I said, I became more focused again in Christ. I moved from what we call the SU days of no earring, no scarf, no of this, no. And I began to read the Bible for myself and understood that really that extreme is unnecessary. So I found my balance. So even in my church now, I did church outside the campus gate. I didn't do church fellowship. I didn't do campus fellowship. I did church outside the gate. So I had a church that I was involved with. Again, this serious child, this focused individual, ended up again being a leader. I was welfare leader in one of the churches I was going to, but I ended up in another church because that church had an issue and had to close down because of the pastor who was going back and forth. Another story for another day. But this particular church that I went under the leadership of Reverend Dr. Kanus, Emmanuel Kanus, became the revolution. I have, in all my life, I think God threw me under that man to shape who I am today. Apart from my dad, this particular man has shaped who I am today. And today, of course, Professor Vincent Anigbogu. But this particular man brought me to confront my Christianity with truth. And he kept repeating phrases in the days of Dr. Miles Moron's teachings of when the purpose of a thing is not known, abuse is inevitable. So we grew up with that thought in the late 80s with such understanding. And so I was, again, focused child, serious person. I took it so seriously. And here I now began to seek the Lord for my purpose, wondering what's the reason for why I'm on earth. I'm a woman, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have children. What is my life? Is that what life is all about? And God began to show me that life is more than that. Life is more than that. And so in 1992, I had a call to ministry to understand that my life is going to be focused on a call. I had a visitation, August 1992, to write down the vision of my life at that time in a summary, based on my understanding. So you can imagine 1992, right now I'm 55. And that was the time I became a deacon also in charge of prayer. My pastor had already trained me. I have never seen such, at that time I almost called it wickedness. For me it was, who sent this man to me? What did I do to him? Why is he picking on me? You know, he will lock me up in a room with a key and tell me to pray all day. And I'm saying, why is it me you're telling to pray? Jack is there, Jill is here, Jonah is there. Why me? But I did not know that that was the best thing of the real me emerging slowly. And so I became a deacon by 92 or so, as the youngest deacon at that time with adults. I remember during the elections, towards the elections of Abiola and co, that the nation was in great contention at that time. My pastor made us pray for 40 days. We had a 40 days all night. That is the kind of training. So I was trained in the word, I was trained in the prayer, and I found my purpose in 92. But the Lord told me it is not time. So by 1999, he said, as we enter the new millennium, it is time for your call. And the fundamental call was premise on that fold of the female leader, raising a generation of women leaders to understand that they can lead alongside with men and yet not usurp authority. We can all work together and make the world a better place. And so I began to focus on that. So by 2002, the necessity of my ordination came. I needed to be ordained. I mean, I thought it was not necessary since I've already become a deacon as a young girl. I can just do the work of God. I wanted to go back to school to do medicine. I got married at 95, and I wanted to still do my medicine. I was adamant. And here I was, God said, no, that's not the path I've chosen for you. This is the path I've chosen for you. And with a great bang, it was with a great knock on my head to remind me that I am the clay, he is the potter. And so by 2002, I had to do my ordination under the same Reverend Canos. At that time, I had led Jos. This was in Jos. So I had to go back to Jos for my ordination. And in the presence of Reverend Emmanuel Canos and Prophet Emmanuel Kure, I was ordained into what we call ministry, where I was ordained as a reverend to now handle the call of God. And that became the journey of my ordination into the different seasons of my life. Well, one of the challenges of women playing a role is fundamental in tradition and upbringing. I didn't have a dad who told me I couldn't lead. So my lead was open, was uncovered. I didn't have a pastor who told me I could not lead. So I didn't have that restriction. So coming into women leadership was something that God had already prepared me for. But the challenge with Africa is many women have been told they cannot lead. They have been shown they cannot lead. They have been shoved aside that they cannot lead. They have been raised that they cannot lead, from the voice in the home to the voice in the local church or the religious organization, depending on what religion you belong to, have told them they cannot lead. And many of these women have not studied to show themselves approved by themselves, to understand that it's right there in the scripture that the day God made male and female, he gave them authority to lead. But the leadership at home regarding the issue of submission is a different ball game. And so I came into understanding that for years I was doing women seminars, women programs, and right now I'm launching out on a women's school of ministry, the Institute of Womanhood and Leadership. But the surprising thing is that I thought that was all. Until 2006, I had a visitation again on the understanding of nationhood and governance. And I began to recognize that as a woman talking about leadership, I needed to know how to contextualize women in the leadership call. And so I began to understand governance, politics, and the whole 9 yards of governing around the 7 mountains of influences. And that's how I also journeyed to Ukraine. We went to Ukraine in 2007 for a training under Dr. Sunday Adelaja to understand politics, God, and nations. And that, I think, also became a turning point of the next season of my life that I'm in right now. Okay, I had the opportunity to be trained. Training is always important. In 2008,
My name is Dr. Juliet.
My name is Etemere Glover.
Naomi. Well done, and shout out to Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News. I want to encourage everyone to keep watching Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News, and yes, tune into them.
Keep watching Souq News. They are one in town.
Hey, we're watching Souq News.
Keep watching Souq News.
Keep watching Souq News. Catch them on YouTube and all social media channels.
Hey, my name is Frank Edowo, and I'm imploring you. No, forget that. I am forcing you, coercing you to always stay tuned to Souq News for your news requirements.